Hi everyone, and welcome to the notes for ecological interactions. We're going to call it symbiosis, but you may see it referred to as ecological interactions as well. So let's jump right in. So there are three types of symbiosis that we're going to learn about today, but first we need to kind of understand what symbiosis is. So we have previously learned that competition and predation, we've learned about both of these. So let's review. Competition is when two organisms compete or fight for resources. They might be competing for a basic need: food, water, shelter. Those are the three most popular things to compete for. Mates might also be an example. Dominance, territory, anything along those lines is something that might be competed over. And then predation is predator-prey. Remember, we talked about, and we need to always remember that if the suffix of a word, like this one is predation, but in our notes we last referred to it as predatory behaviors. As long as the beginning of the word is the same, it is just a different ending. Think of the word walked. I walked to class. I am walking to class. It still means the same thing. So symbiosis is a type of interaction between organisms. So here is the official definition of the word symbiosis. It's any relationship in which two species live closely together and at least one benefits. So that's going to be the key thing here. With competition, neither organism was benefiting. They both had a sad face, and we're going to review that at the end of this little video. Competition, both were sad. Think of when you're competing for a seat in the cafeteria, or you're competing for the lead trumpet role in band class, or you're competing to be the best horse rider in your little class. So in symbiosis, at least one organism is benefiting. So there are three types of symbiosis that we need to know about, and this is not written down on your notes. I broke it up a little differently on yours. Mutualism, commensalism, parasitism. So this example here is commensalism, and I will try to go back and talk about this picture later on. So just a little preview. What's happening here is these birds are on top of the rhino, and as the rhino walks through the grass, it kicks up all kinds of bugs. These birds get to eat the bugs then. So now we have a very happy bird, but does the rhino care that they're sitting on its back? Not really. So that's going to be an example of commensalism. So let's break into these a little bit more in more detail. So mutualism, you've probably heard of a mutual follower, and that was your bell ringer today. On Instagram and Twitter, those are the two I know about at least, you can have mutual followers. Both of you are benefiting. I follow Bill Nye, and I wish he followed me back. That means we could be mutual followers. We are both happy. We are both benefiting by having one more follower. So the two species may actually depend on one another. So a good example of this is going to be the bee and a flower. So we have talked about this previously, how bees are pollinators. So what that means is that they are pollinating flowers. They're moving the pollen, which is the male gamete, from one flower to another. So here's how both of these species are going to be benefiting. Let's look at the bee first. First, flowers are very pretty and they smell very lovely in order to attract bees because they have nectar. They have very sweet, sticky, sappy material in the bottom of the flowers that the bee can use its long tongue to reach down in and pull out that nectar. So the bee gets food. You can see here in the picture that the bee is covered in pollen, little yellow dots. You can specifically see it back here along its tail end and along its legs. So the bee is actually now picking up pollen from the flower, and it's taking it to another flower when it goes to pick up its next little snack. So the flower is now able to reproduce. So both are benefiting. The bee gets food, and the flower is able to reproduce due to the pollinator. So both organisms are happy in this relationship. Both are benefiting. Let's look at the next one. It's a big word. It's not hard to understand. Commensalism. So this one I think is actually pretty easy. One benefits one benefits, and the other is neither harmed nor helped. They're just unaffected. I kind of describe it like that emoji you can use with the straight face, the meh emoji. So they're not really happy and they're not really sad. So I'm going to give you two examples here. A bird building a nest in a tree. So let's look at the bird first. First, that bird gets its three basic needs: food, water, shelter. If the tree is, let's say, a pine tree specifically, that shelter is present year-round, because we know pine trees such as conifers are able to keep their leaves, their needle-like leaves, year-round. So the bird now has shelter. Most likely it's going to provide some sort of food source. Grubs and bugs like to burrow into these kind of trees and like to live in these trees or near these trees. And then water, if it's eating the needle trees, if it has that adaptation, if it has the ability to eat the leaves, it's extracting water from the leaves, or maybe nearby could be a little stream or something. So the bird is happy. It's got shelter. The tree, does it really care that there's a bird there? Not really. It's still going to be a tree just like it was before the bird. Let's look at the shark and fish picture down here. So this shark, it eats food, obviously. It eats big fish. I'm not really keen on fish. I'm not a fisherman. So let's just use one that I like to eat. Bass or salmon. I know a shark wouldn't actually eat these, but just because I like to talk about them. So a shark eats a big meal of something. Let's just leave it vague, of something. So the shark eats, and when the shark eats, you can see the gill slits over here on the side. The gill slits actually are open holes. So when the shark is munching down on that food, little crumbs or particles float out of the gills. You know how when you're eating, sometimes a crumb lands on your lap. Same thing here with the shark. Little bits of food are actually escaping from the shark's gills. All of these fish here, they are benefiting from that. They swim alongside of the shark. One, they get protection, and two, they get little bits of chewed up food. So it is double benefiting. Does the shark, for the most part, really care that there are fish nearby? Not really. So the shark mostly is unaffected here. It doesn't really care that the fish are nearby. So that's why this one makes sense for commensalism. Either example is good here. And last but not least is parasitism. Back in our classification unit, we talked about parasites when we talked about worms. Tapeworms are parasites. Some roundworms, ascars, those are all examples of parasites. So it is a relationship that involves one organism living with, on, or inside another organism while harming it. So the parasite usually doesn't kill the host, or it's actually going to lose its food source. So let's think about this. So a tick sucking the blood from a deer. So the tick, this one looks like a person's arm, looks like a human arm. So the tick is sucking the blood from the host. So the tick is happy. You can see this tick specifically is very, very full of food. So awesome, very happy for the tick. But the host, this man's arm or the deer, usually is getting harmed. They're losing blood. A lot of times ticks will carry diseases, so they could be harmed long term. Having a parasite inside of your stomach or inside of an organism's stomach causes potentially malnutrition. So the parasite is happy while the host is getting harmed. So let's run through this table real quick. So we're looking at organism 1 and organism 2 with all of these. So mutualism, the example I gave you was a bee and a flower. The bee got food, the flower got reproduction. Both are happy. So on your notes, draw little smiley faces. Make sure you show that they are truly happy, okay? Commensalism, we talked about the bird in a tree. The bird's happy because he gets a nest in a tree, or she gets a nest, or the little family gets a nest in a tree. Does the tree care? Nope. Totally indifferent or unaffected. The tree is still just a tree. Next, we talked about parasitism. We talked about a tick and a deer. The tick is happy. He just got food. He's got a big old mouth of blood, or a leech, or a tapeworm. All of those organisms are very happy. Whereas we, the organism that's being affected, is sad. We are sad because we are getting affected. We might be getting diseases or losing blood or becoming malnourished. Any of those would obviously cause some harm. And the last one, and we did not talk about this today, but we've talked about it in the past, competition. So remember I said about the cafeteria seat. You're competing for that. Or let's talk about my animals. Both of my animals, Nuka, my cat, and Nova, my dog, they like to lay on my lap. Even though Nova's a big old dog, she likes to lay on my lap. They compete for that space. A lot of times, as soon as Nuka, my cat, gets up to leave, Nova will come in. So when you think about it in the whole picture, both of them have the potential to be sad because maybe I don't want anyone on my lap that day. Or maybe someone else takes the cafeteria seat. Or maybe someone else wins the trumpet solo this week in band class. So competition can often lead in both organisms being sad. So with this concluded, you need to look at the front whiteboard or at your Google Classroom assignment sheet for today, and you need to figure out where you need to go next. If you have any questions with the notes, please see Ms. Riddle.